Welcome, Rachel Chambers,
Thanks.
my friend, my old friend. And just for introductions, for folks that don't know me, my name is Michael Goldberg, and I'm the executive director of our Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship, and also a professor at the Weatherhead School of Management. It is a great pleasure to welcome my good friend from Wharton MBA program, Rachel Van Fink, now Chambers. Who's going to share her experiences in working in a lot of our leading large and small companies in the marketing and building brands and products field. We're thrilled, as we always do with these sessions, to have student moderators. And Vishwa Aduru, am I pronouncing your last name? How do you pronounce your surname?
Yeah, that's right, Aduru.
I had Vishwa's brother, Chai, as a student. They're great family from Austin, Texas, all the way up here in chilly Cleveland, and proud members of the Case Western Reserve men's tennis team, and Earl is here as well from the tennis team. So these sessions are best when people ask questions. So for those that are here on Zoom, or if you're on LinkedIn Live, if you're in Zoom, just let Vishwa and I know if you have a question and we'll work you in. And if you're on LinkedIn Live, just put a question in the comments and I will be monitoring it and I'll feed it to Vishwa. So with that, over to you, Vishwa, and Rachel. Thanks for joining.
Sure, absolutely.
Hi, I'm Vishwa Aduru. I'm currently a freshman at Case. I'm currently undecided on my major. I'm looking into finance, computer science, something in those fields. So I'm really excited to be moderating this session today. And so just to start off, I was wondering, Rachel, if you could just talk a little bit about yourself, maybe, and your career field path for now.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I have, went out of undergrad, wanted to work, thought I wanted to be an investment banker, and had the opportunity to work in commercial real estate, an investment company. It's now Jones Lang LaSalle's the company now, and in their analyst program. And it was interesting, like it all links together there. But one of the reasons I was interested in commercial real estate, because there was a physical asset linked to it, so versus these amorphous products and everything, there was something physical, tangible you were working with. Awesome experience, great group of people, fun to live in Chicago. But as progressed in the analyst thing, realizing as you progress in the company, it becomes more about working the transaction and working the deal. And that wasn't as interesting to me. And it was more this spark of general management, owning the product, being more interested. That's where some of the marketing elements, that idea of brand was kind of sparked. Before I went to grad school, I had the opportunity to teach English for a year in the Czech Republic. So, and I was in a small town about 2 hours south of Prague. And what was really interesting there was the mid-90s. So very fortunate to be there during this time of still tremendous transition after the fall of communism and the transition in government. And so really great case studies and watching all these new products come to market, apologies there, and how all these new things were happening. And so a lot more spark in that brand management as you see the all these new products come to market, American products, other things there. So really appealing. Went back to grad school and was pretty focused on brand management out of the get-go because of that interest. And then had the opportunity to work at P&G coming out, which came back to my hometown area of Ohio. Spent 12 years there working across brands. And then just the benefits too of working with other folks and building advocates too, which I encourage you all to have. Had the opportunity to, an old boss of mine at P&G became the head of Starbucks CPG business. So wanting to bring all that business, so I had the opportunity to go out and be a part of building that capability at Starbucks, an amazing experience. And then we moved to Seattle, but needed to be back in Cincinnati. So came back and joined a confection company, a candy company, which was family owned. Perfetti Van Melle is the name, which most of you probably don't know, but they're some of the brands they make, hopefully you know and love. Airheads candy and Mentos candy and gum are two of the key US brands. And then just recently, in the past 6 weeks, I've joined Voss Water. And again, another opportunity of an old boss from Starbucks, actually, is the new CEO of Voss Water and building a new team. So he asked me to come on board to lead marketing. So great opportunity. And so just great also experiences across big publicly traded, privately held, family owned, and now very learning the ways of private equity and some of the multiple stakeholders, multiple owners, that model as well.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool how you talked about starting P&G, like really big company, going transitioning into like smaller company like Voss. What would you say are like some of like the biggest like advantages or disadvantages you've noticed, like going from like a bigger company like P&G now working at Voss in your like 6 weeks here so far?
Yeah. So there's lots of pros and cons, right? And any model, right? So on the big publicly traded side, a pro, a lot of resources, established processes, there's typically vetted career development programs and training programs. So that is a big pro for sure, especially starting out if you're looking for more of those training grounds and other pieces, hugely beneficial, and learning a lot of great fundamentals and ways of working that are I've found to be very valuable in my as I've moved on to other companies. And some of the challenges in a big publicly traded, right, is a lot of times the size and your ability. I've always found, and I truly believe, you can make an impact wherever you are in an organization, but you typically own a smaller piece of the pie earlier on, right? There's tends to be more hierarchical structures. And then you're often there's the Wall Street pressure, right? The shareholder pressure. And so that drives sometimes a lot of decisions. And the family owned, so you remove all the shackles of publicly traded, right? And all those pieces, but now you have an owner, right? Somebody this is their baby, this is what they've done. And, you are working for them. So that comes with its own both awesome things, right? They offer resources. You can have a longer term view, but they are, they're the owners, right? And so you serve at their pleasure. I think another benefit too, because it was a smaller, organization, is you do get to have your arms around a bigger piece of the pie. And I've felt that, really the ability to impact kind of end to end was very gratifying in that regard. Despite some of the size. And now at Voss, it's still very early days. But this is literally, though, we are pretty small, pretty scrappy. We have a huge growth ambition and growth trajectory, an amazing brand asset that I believe we have. So it's all about rolling up your sleeves and making it happen, which is really fun. I love getting dirty and doing the work as well as helping oversee. So, but yes, I hope that helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's pretty cool. The different dynamic between these publicly traded companies versus these smaller family-owned companies.
Yeah.
So when clearly you have you've been in the marketing field for a while now. Have you noticed any big trends or changes from when you started a while ago to now? Anything big you've noticed in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest shift by far has been where the power dynamic lies. So, and I kind of came in on the tail end of this, but it used to be the manufacturer and CPG in particular, right, had a lot of the power. They had the power to really influence retailers to carry their items, really a lot of power in the marketing, right, and driving consumer choice. And that's really shifted. So first, I watched the shift from manufacturer to retailer as retailers built scale and through acquisition and growth. So it went from all the different mom and pop grocery stores, and you didn't have a lot of the chains. As that consolidated, you saw retailers really begin to be bigger than a lot of the companies, manufacturers, and really wield their power. And so how, some of that power dynamic shift there. And then the latest shift has been in the past, 10, 15, well, it's been more than that, but really in the past 10, 15 years, the shift now, the power base to the consumer, right? So the consumers now have so much more ability to drive the conversation, drive the engagement, drive where they go, drive their choice. So it's really been that power shift has been probably the most dynamic. And then that's really changed a lot of the ways we go to market, how we think about levels of partnership, how we work with consumers, and with some of these shifts as well. I think the other piece, that an outcome of that, is just the fragmentation of media. As you've gone from one manufacturer putting things on, a couple TV channels and some print ads, to now all the just different ways we need to engage and stay in touch with the consumer through traditional advertising, content creation, influencers, social media, all those things. That added fragmentation and complexity has been fun, but also hugely challenging as well, just to stay on top of things as we make our choices.
Yeah, and it definitely makes sense. So it looks like Earl has a question. So Earl, if you could just introduce yourself, unmute yourself, and then ask your question.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for doing this today.
Sure.
So I'm a senior at Case. I'm getting a bachelor's in economics, and I'm pursuing a master's in finance, and I am a team member of Veale. And
Nice.
I guess my question goes back to you talked about a lot of big brands. You work with a lot of big brands like Starbucks. You've worked with Airheads, and so I was wondering if I'm a startup and I want to establish a brand, have you noticed anything about these companies that have like made them stand out, and like how they developed the brand, how they kind of marketed the brand to kind of make them successful, and some things that you can impart onto someone trying to build a brand?
Sure. Yeah. So I think always, if you're starting a brand, right, is really what's your purpose, what's your mission, what's your difference, right? What problem are you helping solve for consumers? And is that, seen as meaningful? And if you can, that business idea, that brand really has that connection and can build that traction, I think that is always, where the magic happens, whether it's a big brand or a small brand. And I think that's where small brands have really caught a lot of bigger brands on their back heels, as we've seen, because they've been able, through the big brands might not have seen the value, right, or the scale in some of these ideas. They might have missed it in things or been a little arrogant at times as well. So I think that ability to really find that space, find that unmet need, find that proposition that's really holding true to someone and build that traction, I think is ultimately always the key to success. I think then how to go to market, right, to build that success, right, as you don't have a lot of the resources. So I think, which is one of the great benefits of so many of the channels now being able to go to direct to consumer, use Amazon as a platform and other D2C venues, right, that help you build that one-to-one connection in particular and learn as you go, to get that direct interaction with the consumer as well. And once you build that success, right, others start to notice, and then that helps you get some of that other. And I don't know if you're looking at my experiences with packaged goods. I'm not tech marketing, tech brand work makes me nervous. I get a little overwhelmed by all the complexity, but I still think a lot of those core elements stay true. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for that response. It looks like Aaron has a question. Once again, if you can just unmute yourself and then introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Aaron.
My name is Aaron, and I'm actually an employee at Case in the School of Medicine Department of Development and Alumni Relations. And I just found the topic to be interesting. Also, when I saw the word Voss, it came right to my mind of when I'm in front of the coolers at the gas station or wherever.
Okay, good. Good to know we have distribution.
Exactly. So
University Hospital. Oh yeah. Is University Hospital a part of Case? Is that the?
Yes, we still have an affiliation with both.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, my cousin was a radiologist at university. So.
Oh, okay. So my question is in regard actually to philanthropy. Over the last few years, we have seen so many companies really step out and build a philanthropic component to their organization and really advertise, not just the product, but here's what we're going to do for the community. And I'm wondering, as we think going forward, and a lot of those are large companies right now, what kind of opportunities job-wise do you see maybe within companies, even if they're a smaller or mid-sized company, real life job titles, not necessarily foundation piece where they're going to give a bunch of money away, but that type of work, do you see that growing? Do you see that, actually being real job pieces? I mean, where does that live within a company?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think it's, what's the role of, so I think it starts with the brand's purpose, right? If they've been able to clearly articulate what their purpose is and identify their stakeholders, right, that they believe are really key, and what role is community and giving play in that, right? So I think consumers are continuing to become more and more savvy and demanding that of their brands. But I think it's where in their life stage, how they want to execute that, right? Does that become just through giving? Does that become a job title in and of itself or linked to other things? So for example, I think where we are right now, we do a lot of corporate giving in terms of giving. So the brand's been through a lot of different ownership things the past several years. So there's been some ups and downs and consistency, but still giving and sharing water is such a core, vital part of people's lives. So like, for example, in this past year, we've donated over 1 million bottles of water to organizations. Now, that wasn't a job, someone's dedicated job, right? So there was a gentleman on my team that leads a lot of our social and influencer, helped sync up, and we worked with Dwayne Johnson as one of our, The Rock is one of our spokes or partners, and with him and other influencers, right, to how can we help facilitate that. We have our whole supply chain piece that has all the parts. So it's been a part of people's jobs where I've been to date versus a dedicated role. Again, we're pretty small. I think at other companies like Starbucks, right, where there is so much more about, the initiatives around veterans, around, partner engagement, around education, right? There's other places where there are very robust roles and things dedicated to that. So I don't really know how many of those roles really exist, but I'd say there's room for them. But I think flexibility and interest in being able to wear multiple hats is probably, savvy too. I think we're seeing it a lot with diversity and inclusion too, right? How to think about those roles as just absolute dedicated roles, because sometimes they really need to be, versus do they become something that, becomes a part of someone's role, if that makes sense. Right. Did I answer your question?
No, it does. And it also made me think sort of from a selfish perspective. Yeah. I do, I think there's an opportunity here to encourage, somehow influence or encourage those who are buying your product are not just paying for your product, but if they know your product is giving X amount to
absolutely, yeah,
such group, not only have they been a customer at that moment, but they've been a little bit of a philanthropist too, which I think
absolutely, yeah,
is a long way for sort of helping our world stay in that mindset of philanthropy, that you can do, even just a smidge.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think some brands have made it really core to their identity, right? Like the Tom Shoes of the world. And I know they're changing their model right now, and others have figured it out as they've gone along. But I think always starting with what's your purpose as a brand? Why are we existing? Why are we getting there? And who are who are those people that we want to work with and involve? And I think consumers definitely appreciate, I think the model of corporations purely just for profit is, shifting, I think, in a good way. And how do we just keep and do that and execute that on a company by company level? But I agree, consumers are demanding it a lot more now than they have in the past.
Right. Thank you so much. Thanks for
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. The question, great response. I think definitely hope to see more corporate philanthropy in the future. I think Professor Goldberg has a question now.
Yeah, about Airheads?
It's gonna be a tough one, Rachel. You weren't gonna get out of here without grilling for me. So, when we were in business school together, I think we barely had cell phones, let alone smartphones.
Yeah.
But now, whether it's us or our kids, and sort of seeing how folks are using their phones and social media to communicate, particularly, I mean, my kids are high school kids, so short videos, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok, I mean, it really is jarring and quite amazing to sort of see what folks are doing with short video. And it's something actually we're wrestling with even on our campus, whether it's we're working with startups, kind of what Earl was asking about. I'm sort of curious from either kind of your current world at Boss, and obviously you've worn a bunch of different hats in small, large companies, embracing social media and using short videos to get at folks that maybe have much shorter attention spans than like a second commercial or aren't reading traditional newspapers. I'm sort of curious as how has your world changed and morphed as these new platforms?
Oh, yeah, I'll be honest, like I can't keep up with it. So like, and the long running joke in my old job was on my Snapchat account, right? I had one follower and it was an ABM on my team because I couldn't figure it out. So so to me it is like, it's exciting, but it's also overwhelming, right? As you just think, oh, like how many things do I need to do and stay on top of? And like, I can't keep it straight. And they change daily, right? Oh, Facebook, I used to be able to target this way and now I can't, I got to target this way. So having our investments in media experts and has, increased, right? Is I need to have, and we've invested in my last role at Perfetti. We had a dedicated full-time person, for media and one and a half, because it just is so complex, to help partner with our agencies to help keep us all straight. But in terms of what you need to do and where to be present, I think it really starts with who's your target consumer, right? Like really, really understanding them. What are they using to get messages? How to reach them, et cetera. So if you're going after old ladies like me, it's much different than if I'm trying to attract a teenager. So really, and then what are your objectives, right? As a brand, is it really about building that awareness? So and what category are you in? So in confection, right? Like the most important thing I need to do is be aware, right? And like Airheads, for example, there's no brand loyalty. People have 8 or 9 brands in their consideration set at any one time. There's no risk to the purchase, right? It's $1, like there's no consideration, and there's so much on impulse. So what I needed to be in their head and feel like relevant for them, right? So this is a brand I'm aware of, and it's a brand I think is for me. So when they're walking in a store, that hopefully our sales guys have gotten that distribution right, that they see the brand, boom, I want to buy that brand. Versus in cars or other higher consideration, coffee even, for example, like Starbucks, right, is an expensive coffee. An older target consumer, much more driven by an occasion. So how I want to reach them will be different, right? As I think about how I want to make sure that this item's worth it, how I can link it and make occasions special, how I can pair it with things. So it was a different model of message and barriers you need to overcome. And I think so if you understand your consumer and what job, barriers you're trying to overcome to reach them, I think then that helps really build some clarity on what are those tactics and tools that you need to reach them. But agree, it is overwhelming when you get to it. But I think if everybody's on the same page of who you're trying to go after and what you're trying to accomplish with them, that's the harder work, I feel like. And then once you get that clear, then the tactics usually help take care of themselves a little bit.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. I think Earl has another question.
Go for it, Earl.
So you were talking about getting in the consumer's head. And so I was wondering how How do you guys, I know data is like a big thing now, is a big
Yeah.
trend. And so is that the main way you guys kind of like the data analytics to get into, to understand a consumer, or are there other
Oh, yeah. Data's great.
techniques?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Data's great, having the quantitative data, but there's nothing better than spending time with a consumer, right? And consumers, and getting to know them, building that richness in the conversation, whether it's a, a shop along, in-home interviews, even focus groups, right? When you can put context and richness and emotion around the sales. Sorry, I'm at my mom's house and she has a landline. Don't tell anybody. So that richness and understanding of the consumer is just, it does so much to help enhance, right, and bring richness to your understanding of them than thanks, Michael, than just looking at numbers on a page. So any opportunity you can to interact with the consumer live or build that, I think always just pays off, especially when you're creating an idea or something new. Again, you need the quantitative data to help validate things at time, or help build some of that quantification. But whenever you can get those interactions, and there's a nice thing with mobile, it's enabled lots of other ways to get those engagement, right? Because everybody's got a camera now, right? You don't have to establish these fancy focus groups where you're having everybody come in to sit around a conference table.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I've been known to spy on people in the grocery store too, and ask them questions on the fly.
Thank you. I was wondering, so we talked about like the target consumer, and so when you try to like implement like a new marketing strategy,
Yeah.
and it might not be successful, what kind of like options do you look at, try to like change that, and at what point do you try to think about maybe changing your target audience or things like that?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. So I think not everything's always successful, right? So I think it's always making sure you spend the time and digging through and doing a good postmortem of why, what went sideways, because every plan never is executed as planned. And a lot of times I think I find when things haven't gone as planned, well, there's no big rule of thumb, but a lot of times there's, but making sure you spend that time and go back and look at it. So was a lot, I guess I would say a lot of times the big idea, was it executed as you intended, right? So a lot of times we have grand strategies and grand ideas, but when it comes to the actual execution of it, it doesn't get executed, and the consumer doesn't really care about your big strategy or your big idea. If they don't see it and can't experience it, that's great. And I know I've had to relearn a few times in my career, like, you work in marketing, right? You want to work on the big campaigns, the big ideas, but if you don't have distribution, if you don't have the right pricing strategy, if you're not in the right places where people are looking for your product, like, you know what, forget it, right? Because you can do all this amazing marketing, but if people can't find it, it's not the right price, it's not in the right section of the store, forget it. So, but I think it's always doing that post-mortem, looking about, what did I intend to do? How did it execute? What did I need? What do I need to do? Understanding the category dynamics, right? Are we seeing new entrants coming in? Are we seeing shifts in how people are experiencing the category, new occasions that are emerging? I think you just really need to stay in touch with the data and the trends as well. But I think, to your initial piece of things go sideways, right? I think it's always making sure you do that, spend that appropriate time and do an honest postmortem, which sometimes can be challenging because folks like, let's just move on. Let's just move on, right? I don't want to rehash the past. Let's just move on. There can be defensiveness, right? Like, people don't want to be in the blame game. Let's build, not blame, don't want to feel like they're being picked on. But I think whenever you can get the folks around the table to really do that deconstruction, always with the mindset of how do we do better, always pays out. But it's not always easy to do.
Right. Yeah. I think especially pinpointing the specific problem is definitely, it seems like a tough spot. So I was wondering, you talked about there's like a new transition recently into like consumer powered marketing and things like that. These currently, I was wondering if you think that would change at all for the future, or like what do you expect to happen in the future?
Yeah, no, consumers will continue to be in control. I don't see that changing, and I think, well, how will we continue to adjust to that, and how will our ways of shopping continue to adjust? I think this past year has been really interesting. I mean, hard in lots of ways, but really interesting too, because it's fast forwarded a lot of trends, accelerated some crazy trends, and what will be the lasting impact that has on how we shop, how we use products, how we interact with products as well. I think we'll see, from the old categories that I've worked in, even the one now, right? So COVID has accelerated lots of e-commerce activities, right? Our ways of shopping for groceries, I think, are forever changed. So our habits of being at home more, right? So the gum and mint category, our Mentos business, that category was decimated. It's been decimated in the past year. It's down 25% because people aren't, number one, interacting with other people. So nobody really cares what their breath is. People aren't going through the checkout lanes in the grocery store, right? Where the majority of those categories are being purchased, more focus on health and wellness. So I think, the impacts of COVID too will have a lasting and enduring impact on, both how we shop and then the consumer, I think will accelerate some of the consumer power as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I think Professor Goldberg has kind of a similar question relating to the pandemic.
Yeah, just to follow up. You made a career switch, or at least a company switch, maybe not.
Company switch, yeah.
Mid pandemic, right?
Yeah.
I'm sort of curious. As a company that's selling water from across the Atlantic and whose headquarters aren't even in where you're living, if you can even talk about distributed work, both kind of, joining a company kind of in the middle of the pandemic, and sort of as you see going forward, what does it mean? What does place mean in terms of building your team, working with colleagues?
It's great. Yeah.
We're struggling with that question right now.
So it's been interesting. So I've been working from home a year now, and at first it was so hard, right? And even because the company was such a hands-on meeting culture, and it was exhausting in lots of ways, but also, freeing in lots of ways. And I think the only reason I'm working now for Voss Water is really because of the pandemic, to be totally honest, right? So the company their headquarters were in New York City. Everybody came and sat there, the plants in Norway. And they shut it down. They shut the office down. No reason to pay, for space at Rockefeller Center when nobody's there. The new CEO, Glenn, he lives in Naples 9 months of the year, and the shore, the other 3 months, Jersey Shore, 3 months of the year. So the COVID has unlocked, changed also ways of working, right, forever, that I think will be interesting to watch. So our team now is, so I'm in Cincinnati. Our head of supply chain is he was in Atlanta. We're just transitioning to a guy now that's in New Jersey. Our CEO's in Florida. We've got still a lot of people in the New York City area. Our head of sales is in Texas. So it's been really interesting to join a company now. And my team is all in New York, but it's been really interesting to join a company. And I haven't met I know I've met one person face to face, but that was, because I used to work for him, but it's all been virtual. We're hoping to be able to have our first live meeting together here soon in the next few months. So, but I don't think it would have never worked if, if the pandemic hadn't happened and, folks just weren't totally rooted and grounded in virtual learning. I think what will be challenging and interesting to watch, right, is we don't have a plan yet. We will go back to being in the office, but I know my old job, one of the reasons it was worked well because everybody's on the screen. And if you get back into a situation where you got half the room sitting around the table and half on a conference call, right, back in the old dynamics of it being really hard to communicate, hard to hear, hard to participate, I think those will be the interesting things we got to work through going forward. But it has been really interesting joining the company and not meeting folks, but it hasn't been, of course, I'd rather work with people around the table, but it hasn't been as hard as I expected it to be because I think everybody's doing it and been doing it now for a year. Does that help? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to get your insight on this.
Yeah.
We're doing it on campus. The difficulty, and these guys know it. I mean, the difficulty, dual delivery, and kind of where we're going back to hopefully, knock on wood, having students back in the classroom. But I think there are a lot of things out of this period that we're going to carry with us.
Yeah. Yeah. My sister's she's a public school teacher in Chicago, and she's trying to do the, where she's got half the kids on the computer and half in the classroom. And that to me has got to be the ultimate challenge of how and making sure you're addressing both groups. So. Yeah.
Sure. All right, Veale, maybe one more question just for time.
Yeah, that sounds good. I just had just one last question regarding if for individuals in college looking to get into marketing, would you recommend any what would you say maybe some technical skills they should try to learn in order to be successful in the field?
Yeah. Good question. Yeah, because I was an arts and science major undergrad. So, I think just being, the level of curiosity, I think but, if you have opportunities to just understand the skills of marketing, right? And how can you potentially seek those out in your classwork without necessarily, going down hardcore technical skills. So I think being a great writer, being a great critical thinker, being a great problem solver, being able to think about big ideas from a strategy standpoint, as well as executing ideas. I think I know you can get a lot of those just key skills in any type of, major you go into. And then if you can just supplement that with, if there's something about consumer insights or even sociology, right, where you're getting and learning about how you learn about cultures and societies, and then potentially how to, if there's a specific area of, even just a marketing 101, but just start reading trade magazines. I think a lot of time, right, Advertising Age or other pieces, I think you can learn and pick up a lot of the jargon, if not, and start to get some of those understandings that I think can give you some of the technical background you might need. But I'd say looking for internships too, there's nothing better than getting that feet on the street experience. That's going to be much more valuable than something, I think a lot of times what you might pick up in a technical class. So take advantage. I would always take advantage of your undergrad experience to just really get those foundational experiences and the skills and the basics. It'll take you there.
That's good. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm gonna hand it back to Professor Goldberg right now, but really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Veale. Yeah.
All right, Veale, thank you. Great job moderating. Look forward to hopefully getting you in class, like your brother, troublemaker that he was in my class. It's good guys. I'm a big fan of the men's tennis team here, so I see them every morning practicing as I walk. Nice. Rachel, thank you so much for doing this. It's awesome to catch up. I do look forward being fellow Ohioans at some point. Yes. I know we haven't seen each other in a long time, but
that's good.
Really appreciate you sharing insights with us today.